Welcome to the Peacekeeper Class Premade Character Guide. This video will only cover the basics of the Premade character, just to help you start playing quickly. We are using the numbers in the character sheet as is. If you want to know how the numbers in their character sheets are calculated, then you should read Chapter 3 of the book, Character Creation. There are three main aspects of your player characters, or PCs, that make them unique. Life form. This is what your PC is born or created as. It is not something that you can normally change. It grants your PC the associated life form traits. Character quirks. These are your PC's behavioral subquirks that adds to your role-playing opportunities. They can be changed slowly as your PC levels up. Class. This is the main source of your combat features, though they always have some adventuring features too. They can be swapped around easily if you have at least one rank in other classes. Lifeform traits and character quirks are mainly used for adventuring and have little to no combat application. The pre-made Peacekeeper's lifeform is Orc, so she has the Hardy major trait and the Explosive Voice minor trait. Hardy gives her 2 additional item slots, which brings her total to 10 instead of the usual 8. Her Explosive Voice allows her to roll Intimidation with Edge, but if you choose this option, all creatures within 1 kilometer radius, including potential enemies, can hear her. There's risk attached to the benefit of this trait. Her subquirks are Ignored, which is part of the Calm character quirk, and Sense Danger, which is part of the Cautious character quirk. Ignored allows her to hide in the open as long as she stays still and not being actively observed when she rolls thievery. Sense Danger allows you to ask the Game Master, or GM, whether there is any danger within 30 meters, 3 zones, of your PC. This works on enemies and hazards that are invisible, including those behind closed doors. You can use this 3 times per session. Unlike traits and features, subquirks regain their uses every session. Her adventuring class feature is Identify Threat. It allows her to know the damage of any weapon she sees and whether someone is concealing any weapon. Just ask your GM for this information. To get a better idea of this character's combat class features, let's enter a combat situation. Combat situation is the most common type of critical situation. The GM starts the combat setup process by establishing the victory and failure conditions. The most common way of winning is by routing the enemy, which is done by reducing the enemy's morale tokens to 0. Routed enemies may be wiped out or retreat safely, depending on what the GM considers to be narratively convenient. They no longer pose a threat to the PCs. Next, you establish the turn order. This is the order by which the PCs and monsters controlled by the GM take their turns. Your turn order is the same number as your turn speed, and the higher number goes first. If there are characters with the same turn order number, PCs always go before enemies, and if more than one PC has the same turn order, they decide among themselves who goes first. Finally, you decide the character's position. The battle map can be as big as you want, and there are 2 types of formations the GM will call for. In scenario formation, the GM will place you wherever it's logical for the narrative. In standard formation, your party and the enemy group are placed in separate zones with 1 empty zone in between. Those who want to intercept the enemy melee fighters can advance into the empty zone, which now serves as the melee zone. If nobody from your side advances into the melee zone, your opponents can advance as far as they want. There is no limit to the number of PCs and enemy units that can share a zone. The Peacekeeper wields a greatsword, and she's a great frontliner, so she should advance to the frontline position. Her turn speed is 5, that's also her turn order. At the start of your turn, don't forget to pick up a spirit token. As a level 1 character, she can only make one major action and one minor action. You can read all about the different types of actions you can take in Chapter 11. Her weapon drill feature improves the base damage of her favored weapons. So, her greatsword's damage becomes 12 instead of the usual 8. Peacekeeper is one of the easiest classes to use. All she needs to do is stand in front and attack the enemies in the same zone she occupies. Well, since she only has a melee weapon, she can only attack enemies in the same zone as her anyway. To attack, just declare to the GM that you want to use your major action to attack a target, and make a major melee attack. You roll 2 6-sided dice, or 2d6, and add 2 to the combat roll bonus. The 2 points comes from her mastery bonus. She can benefit from the bonus because she has mastery in heavy weapons, such as a greatsword. Damage is calculated as per first beginner guide video. Enemies are defeated when either of their hit points, HP, or mind points, MP, are reduced to 0. But instead of defeating them, you can neutralize them by making the right skill or toolkit roll. The monster's neutralization condition is in their respective stat blocks in Chapter 12. Cloudbreaker Alliance has an open book policy. As long as your character knows what that monster is, you can look up its stats or ask the GM any questions regarding it. But if your character doesn't recognize it, or its identity is hidden or camouflaged, you can make an information skill roll to analyze it. The first analyze roll on your turn is a free action. Subsequent ones are made with minor actions. The task difficulty is in the stats block. If you fail this roll, the GM may tell you what other skills or toolkits you can use to analyze the monster next time. By succeeding the roll, you are informed that the monster you are facing is a razor shell. They are sensitive to high-pitched noise, so you can neutralize them using your minor action and whistling really hard with your artistry skill roll, or use the air horn in your mechanics kit. You can read more about what your skills and toolkits can do in Chapter 8. Neutralizing a monster requires a minor action and succeeding in the relevant skill roll. Since this PC has a mechanics kit, you can use that. This monster's neutralization task difficulty is 16, but since the monster is faltering, the task difficulty is reduced to 8. Each type of monster has their faltering conditions, but the most common one is to reduce their hit points to 50% of their maximum or below. When a monster is defeated or neutralized, it leaves the field, and the group lose a morale token. But the GM may use the available morale tokens as morale boost, and one of its functions is to ignore the neutralization. Keeping monsters on the field is a double-edged sword for the GM, because even though they can keep their numerical advantage for longer, it becomes the weakest link, and the GM may overuse their morale tokens to keep it fighting. Whenever a morale token is lost or used by the GM, it is rewarded to the PC as a spirit token. This represents the tide of combat turning. When you think you've done everything you wanted to do, you can end your turn and let the next character take theirs. You don't have to use all your actions. If an enemy tries to move out of your zone, you can use your free action to make an opportunity strike against it with a major melee attack. You have unlimited use of free actions, so you can attack every enemy that tries to move out of your zone to reach your party members. Of course, the enemies can do the same. At the start of your next turn, you gain another spirit token and regain the use of all your actions. Now, this is where the fun begins. Spirit tokens are used for Spirit Burst. By default, there are 3 Spirit Burst options. Retry allows you to re-roll your task or combat roll by spending 2 spirit tokens. Rage lets you spend 3 or more spirit tokens to increase your damage by 2 points for each token spent. Evade lets you avoid 1 instance of damage or affliction by spending 4 spirit tokens. There are also spirit bursts unique to each discipline that you can acquire later by reaching the appropriate class rank. The Peacekeeper attacks with her major action and uses Rage. By spending 3 spirit tokens, she dealt almost enough damage to one-shot the Razor Shell. So close! She only needs 1 more spirit token to finish it. Luckily, it is possible for your party members to share spirit tokens. By paying 1 token as transfer cost, you can send your allies any number of the remaining spirit tokens you have. Using the additional spirit token, the Razor Shell's HP is reduced to 0. Again, the GM can keep you on your toes by using the Emergency Half Recovery morale boost. This Razor Shell remains on the field, but the enemy group's morale is at its precarious last token. Luckily, the Peacekeeper still has a minor action, and she uses it to neutralize the Razor Shell. Regardless of whether the GM uses a morale boost or not, the enemy group's morale tokens are depleted, and their will to fight crumbles. The PCs are victorious! The GM then quickly narrates how the enemies are wiped out by the party. If the PCs are merciful, they may choose to spare them. By the way, keep in mind that you're only rewarded for completing missions. You don't receive any experience points or rewards for defeating or neutralizing monsters unless it is the mission's core objective. So, don't waste your time fighting every monster. Escape situations have a similar setup process to combat situations. But the goal is to reach the safe zone before the epic trap is triggered, or reaching the safe zone before the powerful monster chasing you catches up and obliterates you. Your path to the safe zone is often blocked by multiple hazards or branching paths. So, it requires a bit more coordination to succeed here. When you start your turn, you gain a spirit token as usual. You can move on your turn using a minor action. Each movement allows you to move as far as your movement range. Every 10 meters is 1 zone. You can convert your major action to a minor action to move again, but you can't move beyond your maximum movement range even if the PC gains more actions at higher levels. Currently, there is a steep slope preventing the character from moving through. To pass through it, the PCs have to overcome the hazard by rolling 8 on their sports skills or climbing kits as they move. But there is also the option to neutralize the hazard to make it safe for everyone else to pass. This hazard can be neutralized by attaching a rope ladder to the ledge. You can do this with a minor action and making a climbing kit roll of 10. Neutralizing is more difficult than simply overcoming it. That's why you may choose to delay your turn to make someone who has the appropriate skill go before you. You can delay your turn if you haven't taken your turn on that round, and you can do this by reducing your turn order. The drawback is that you have to use the reduced turn order on the next round also. Escape situations require a lot of cooperation, so you should discuss with your party members what's the best course forward. Here are some tips for escape situations. You can use your major action to use the push maneuver to push your ally 1 zone away, and you can even choose to move along with the unit you pushed. Also, if you have any unused minor actions, you can use the assist option to let a party member in the same zone as you make their task roll using your skill or toolkit bonus. When you're dealing with epic traps, moving further away from the epicenter reduces the epic trap damage you receive. If you can't get to the safe zone in time, find a shelter if there is any. It will further reduce the damage. Now that you have finished watching this and the Beginner's Guide video, you should have no problem playing the sample mission in Chapter 15 as this class. If you have the free time before your scheduled game, you can also watch the Monsters and Hazards video. If you haven't already owned Cloudbreaker Alliance, you can go buy the game from the links below. Also, subscribe to the channel because we will be releasing more in-depth videos in the future.